Hi, I'm Trevor Stevenson, and welcome to Your Story Will Be Different. This is a narrative play podcast where I tell you the stories that come to be from a playthrough of a solo tabletop role-playing game. For this session, we're playing Lost Among the Starlit Wreckage by Seamus Keneally. In this game, you are an ace mech pilot trapped inside the wreckage of your mech after a cataclysmic battle. It's a solo journaling game, so while you work to repair your mech, you're also journaling your thoughts and experiences during the war. With that said, let's dive right in.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. My name is Kelvin, call sign Blizzard, to all responsive units on this channel. My mech has taken damage and I am adrift. Systems are failing. Anyone on this frequency, please respond. Anyone out there alive, come back with your call sign. Well, they taught us in basic to broadcast in all directions as much as possible if you're stranded. That's sure to gunk up somebody's broadcast line, so I'm sorry in advance, whoever you are. The silence out here is worse than I imagined it would be. I keep broadcasting the message knowing it's futile, but there's no one left to answer, not out here at least. Just debris, dead comms, and the stars spinning endlessly outside my cockpit. My mech's gyros are fried, and without them, I'm tumbling out of control. It's funny how the silence can make you feel like the universe itself is pressing down on you. My thoughts are spinning just as much as the mech, and I keep hearing my brother Emil's voice in my head telling me not to go off to war in the first place. You don't have to prove anything, Kelvin, he said. You've got nothing to prove to me or to anyone. But Emil didn't understand. He never did. It wasn't about proving something to him. It was about proving something to myself. He always saw the world so clearly, always grounded, always practical. I saw the stars and heard war stories, something bigger than the two of us, bigger than the quiet, smoky streets of home. I saw a chance to matter. But now, hearing this wreck that was my mech, I wonder if he was right. Maybe I shouldn't have come out here. Maybe I shouldn't have left him behind. I think of him back home, poisoned by the smog from the plants and industrial facilities. Mom and Dad were so proud of me to be selected for the pilot program. Emil hated the war, but he stayed to take care of Mom and Dad. I ran toward it to fight the threat, as they called them on Earth. And now, I don't even know where Earth is anymore.
Kelvin grimaced as the console flickered, the gyroscopic stabilizer's warnings drowning out everything else. Without it, the mech would keep spinning until the wreckage tore itself apart. Digging into the emergency toolkit behind the console, he pulled out a salvage power node, a mismatched replacement his brother would have called an insult to engineering. Kelvin smirked at the thought, though it didn't last long. Time was against him. His hands were steady despite the low oxygen warning blinking in the corner of the HUD. He worked to rewire the stabilizer. Sparks flew as circuits resisted the crude repairs, but eventually the mech's spinning slowed. It wasn't perfect, but the stabilizers were functional again. For the first time in hours, the stars outside held still.
Stabilized, at least for now, but every panel around me is lit up with warnings. The whole integrity monitor is screaming at me, its angry red glow always demanding attention. This mech wasn't supposed to be a coffin. It was supposed to be unstoppable. Designed for the front line, built to endure anything, to tear the antivores apart, and yet here I am, patching its cracks like it's some run-down tractor.
The whole monitor's alarms grated against Kelvin's nerves, but he couldn't ignore it any longer. Crawling towards the access hatch beneath the console, he pried it open and surveyed the tangled mess of damaged wiring and scorched plating. Using some of the last of his heat-resistant patching material, Kelvin worked to seal a crack along the lower paneling. Each weld sent vibrations through the mech's frame, making him wonder how long the repairs would hold. The warning lights dimmed, though the system itself remained precarious. It wasn't a fix, a permanent one, just another patch. One more desperate attempt to keep everything together. Kelvin slumped back into the pilot's seat, staring at the readouts. The hull wasn't strong, but at least it wasn't failing outright yet. The reactor was running hot, far too close to critical. Kelvin knew that the cooling system was the only thing preventing a meltdown, and even that was hanging by a thread. He unlatched a panel near the reactor housing, wincing as the heat poured out. Steam hissed as he applied a thermal regulator patch to one of those damaged coolant lines. It wasn't enough, so he diverted power from an auxiliary system to stabilize the core's temperature. As the reactor's hum evened out, Kelvin leaned back, exhausted. The temperature gauge dropped into the safe zone, though the repairs wouldn't last forever. The mech wasn't dying yet, but Kelvin wasn't sure he could keep it that way.
The reactor's cooling system is patched. For now, it won't explode, though I still feel like that could happen at any second. It's an exhaustion I haven't experienced before. I never imagined myself out here staring at the stars through cracks in a cockpit, held together by desperation and duct tape. How did I end up here? I told my brother that I joined the fight for something bigger than myself, for the lives of everyone on the planet. We had seen what the Antivore Scouts had done when they found our planet. I knew I had to do something. He called me naive. I knew what I was doing then, and I was sure of it. But I don't now. I thought it was for honor, maybe for family, maybe even for him. But when I close my eyes, I can't picture victory. I can only see the people we've lost. I try not to think of the extinction of a completely different species. Was it worth it?
The comms array was in worse shape than Kelvin expected. Panels were scorched, and circuits had fused from the heat of a reactor breach earlier. Kelvin grabbed a spare comm amplifier, rigging it into the system with a shaky hand. A sharp spark erupted as he twisted the wires together, and the array buzzed to life. He leaned forward, sending a ping out into the void. The static continued, unbroken. The repairs were holding, but the silence remained.
Comms are online again. I sent out a dozen signals again, but no one is answering. Maybe no one's left to hear me. I trained harder than anything in my life for this. Becoming an ace pilot was supposed to be the pinnacle of everything I wanted. I was fast, sharp, relentless in every simulator. The squad said I was born for this. Back then, I believed them. But no one ever told me what it really meant. No one cared to mention that being an ace wasn't about skill. It was about surviving when no one else could. Killing when no one else would. One of the guys in my pilot class, his call sign was English. He was the best pilot on Earth. He could field strip a railgun in a heartbeat and pilot his mech like it was a living organic thing. It was honestly inspiring. But the first time we saw actual combat, the first time we saw those 100-foot writhing green worms, he froze. And they tore him apart in front of all of us. I don't know why, but this is making me think of Emil again. Of the look he gave me the last time we spoke before I left. He didn't say goodbye. He just handed me a packet of drawings, things he was proud of. He said, "Take these with you so you don't forget what it's like to create something instead of destroying it." I left them on Earth.
The life support systems were clogged with ash and dust, presumably from the last few weeks fighting the threat. Kelvin worked carefully, replacing the corroded intake valves with salvaged parts from the mech's emergency reserves. Each movement felt heavier than the last. But finally, the airflow indicator shifted from critical to stable. Cool air hissed through the vents, filling the cockpit with the first clean breath in hours. Kelvin exhaled, leaning his head back against the seat, and prepped another comm blast.
I fixed the life support system. At least now I won't suffocate. The mech feels like it's breathing with me, even if it's just machines pushing stale air into my lungs. I regret so many things. I regret walking away from a meal, from mom, from dad, from Earth. Told myself I had to come back a hero, someone they could be proud of. But if I die out here, I'll just be a story they'll tell to explain an empty chair at the table. Can't stop thinking about the fight my brother and I had before I left. He told me that I was selfish, that I wasn't thinking about what my absence would do to them. I told him he was scared, too afraid to leave home and do something that mattered to the rest of the world. I wonder if he hates me now. Maybe he's looking up at the stars hoping. Maybe he was braver than me all along.
The cockpit was dark except for the faint blue glow of the optical system's shattered display. Kelvin opened the nearby maintenance panel with a sharp tug, revealing a chaotic tangle of wires and circuits burnt to black. He worked quickly as he spliced new connections and rerouted power. Every wire he connected sparked like it was protesting the effort, and the hum of failing systems in the background didn't help his focus. Finally, the display flickered to life, flooding the cockpit with a dim, distorted light. Kelvin sat back, staring at the starscape projected across the screen. A soft beep interrupted the brief moment of accomplishment. A warning flashed in the corner. Structural failure detected. Outer support node compromised. Kelvin's head fell into his hands. It was always like this. Patch one system, lose another. Every repair felt like pushing a boulder up a hill, only to have it roll back down, crushing something else on its way. But he had to keep trying. If he didn't, there'd be nothing left to fix.
The optical system's working again, though I'm not sure I want to see what's out there. The stars look closer than they should. They look like jagged and sharp, like shards of broken glass scattered across a black ocean. It's beautiful in a way, but all I can think about is how empty it feels. The glass in the cockpit is like a mirror, showing me the person I've become through this war. Tired, battered, full of regrets. I see my brother in my reflection too. I wonder if he still thinks about me or if he finally stopped looking up at the stars waiting for me to come home.
Kelvin crouched in the cramped maintenance bay, the tang of burning fuel thick in the air. The rupture in the primary line hissed angrily, spraying a fine mist into the narrow space. His hands were slick with grease and coolant as he clamped the line with an emergency seal. It felt strange to be fighting against his mech. He'd always thought of them as a team. But with each twist of the wrench, it sent vibrations through the mech, making the damaged frame creak ominously. The hiss subsided as the seal tightened, but Kelvin didn't breathe a sigh of relief. He knew it wouldn't hold for long. The fuel lines were a patchwork of repairs on top of older repairs. It was a miracle the system hadn't collapsed entirely. As he finished, the mech's reactor whined and a fresh alarm blared. The sensor suite had gone dark again, leaving them flying blind to everything but the stars. Kelvin slammed a fist against the bulkhead, another system gone, another reminder that the repairs weren't enough.
The fuel lines are holding I can feel the mech groaning in pain every time I adjust something. The repairs are just never enough. I don't know if the war was worth it anymore. We fought for freedom or safety or something. The reasons blurred together after the first year. We called ourselves heroes and told ourselves we were on the right side of this conflict. What does that even mean now? My brother didn't call me a hero. He didn't even call me brave. He just looked tired, like he was already grieving losing me. Our allies call us protectors. Our detractors call us monsters. Both were right in their own way. I've destroyed buildings, people, lives, homes, and told myself it was for the greater good. But now I can't remember what good was supposed to look like.
The secondary sensor suite was buried deep in the mech structure, close to the reactor housing. Kelvin crawled into the access tunnel, the heat oppressive, and the hum of the reactor like a heartbeat beneath his feet. The damaged circuits glowed faintly in the dark, their edges scorched from a power surge. Kelvin scraped away the charred material and painstakingly soldered new connections, the precision work almost meditative in its focus. Sweat dripped into his eyes as he secured the final wire. The suite powered on with a flicker, displaying a hazy scan of the debris field surrounding the mech. As he crawled out of the maintenance tunnel, exhaustion sunk into his bones. As he finally reached the cockpit, the comms array beeped faintly, signaling a nearby transmission. Kelvin hesitated, his hand hovering over the controls. Someone was out there. Or maybe it was just static.
The sensor suite is functional again, though I'm not sure why I bothered. It doesn't take a sensor array to see the emptiness out here. The mech systems are failing faster than I can fix them, and every moment feels like a losing battle. This is the longest my mech has gone without service. Even in the worst fight with the antipores, I could count on the engineers and mechanics to get back to battle ready as soon as possible. But this last fight, you'll probably see the debris field when you find me. Mist of metal glistens when light finds it. There are the severed vines from the threat spread all around. And I can see parts from other mechs, but none of them are connected to anything. I think I'm the only one left.
Kelvin sat in the dim cockpit, staring at the flashing air that dominated the screen. Structural integrity critical. Fuel system failing. Once again, the mech's groaning grew louder as he crawled back into the maintenance bay. The fuel system was hemorrhaging now. A ruptured junction spewed vapor in erratic bursts, each hiss a reminder of how close the mech was to complete shutdown. Kelvin grabbed a patch kit and clamped it around the brake. His fingers trembled as he worked the seal into place. The hiss stopped, but the gauge barely ticked upward. A second line split under pressure, releasing a fresh spray of fuel. Kelvin cursed, tears of frustration welling up as he jammed another patch into place. The mech shuddered violently, and for a moment, Kelvin thought it would tear itself apart right there. But it didn't. The patches were holding, but barely. As Kelvin crawled out of the bay, the display blinked with another new error. The power couplings along the reactor line were beginning to fail. He slumped against the wall, his grease-stained hands falling into his lap. Each fix only delayed the inevitable.
I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. The mech groans with everything I do. The static on the comms is worse now. Sometimes I think I hear a voice, just faint enough to imagine it could be real. I thought I heard my brother Emil's voice once calling me home. But I now know that it's just my mind unraveling. Maybe this is what happens to everyone out here in the end. You fight and then you stop. Not because you want to, but because you can't keep pretending that hope is enough to hold things together.
Kelvin's breath labored as he scanned the array of warnings dominating the screens. The reactor was at the heart of the mech, and it was breaking down in real time. He pried open a panel near the reactor core, and the acrid scent of burning circuits hit him like a wall. The coolant lines were bone dry, The emergency reserves had long since been spent. Grabbing a pressure pump, Kelvin forced the last dregs of coolant into the system. The pipes rattled from under the strain, and the reactor's hum dipped, then steadied. For a moment, it seemed stable. Then the main line burst. A plume of scalding vapor hissed out, narrowly missing Kelvin as he fell back, coughing and choking. The hiss died down, and Kelvin stared at the ruptured line. There was no fixing it this time. As he crawled out of the reactor bay, the mech trembled under his hands as always. The vibrations felt alive, as if the machine was weeping with him.
The mech feels like it's falling apart faster than I can put it together. Every step, every movement is a gamble. And I'm not sure I believe anymore. All I have is this failing machine, the emptiness of space. I thought coming out here and fighting would give me purpose. The comms have gone dead again. Feels like the universe is erasing me, one system at a time.
Kelvin sat motionless in the cockpit, staring at the reactor status display. Every repair he'd made over the last few hours had failed. The reactor was unstable. The power grid was on the verge of collapse, and the external structure was riddled with fractures. The mech was in its final death throes, and for the first time, Kelvin didn't know if he cared enough to stop it. The hum of the reactor sputtered, and then a sharp alarm jolted Kelvin out of his thoughts. Gritting his teeth, he reached for the manual override panel. The actuator lever was stuck, and he had to slam his fist against it to force it open. The cockpit shuddered violently, and the overhead lights dimmed as the reactor dipped below critical. Kelvin worked frantically, bypassing power regulators and redirecting energy from life support to stabilize the core. The lights flickered back to life, and the reactor steadied. But Kelvin knew it was temporary. He sank back into his seat, his head against the headrest. Every breath felt heavier. Every movement was a reminder that this machine wasn't going to save him. It wanted to be let go. To be with the other mechs out here is just debris.
I don't think I can do this anymore. Every time I fix something, 2 more systems fail. You know, I used to think I left because I wanted to matter, but now I'm just now realizing that I was just afraid of being small, afraid of failing, afraid of being nothing. The irony is, out here in this infinite emptiness, I've become everything I feared. I suppose I can take comfort in that I have a view. Back home, the light pollution from the city and the factories make it pretty impossible. It's one of the best memories I have of the war, seeing the stars and the moon on a daily basis. I feel like I'm making up for all the time I couldn't see them. The mech is silent now. Every system I could repair has failed. Every alarm I could silence has gone dark. There's nothing left to try to fix. I could barely see that pale blue dot in the distance. It's funny to think that all of humanity is there, safe now because of all of us. I wonder if my brother is looking up at the stars thinking about me. I hope he isn't. I hope he stopped waiting and moved on. He deserves a life that isn't shackled to a twin who left him behind. For the first time, I'm going to let myself admit what I've been denying all along. I'm not getting out of this. It's a strange relief, knowing it's over. The fear slips away, replaced by something softer. Not quite peace, but close enough. I'm just going to close my eyes for a bit.
This is ASC territory. Anyone repeat? Location unknown. Responding.
Hello? Are you a rescue ship? This is Kelvin. Blizzard. I'm here. I'm alive. Coordinates. Unknown. Just please. I'm here. Oh my God. I see you. I'm over here. Please. I just want to go home.
When I was researching TTRPG systems for this season, I discovered I Have No Railgun and I Must Scream and Lost Among the Starlit Wreckage at the same time. And because they were both mech-related stories, or systems, I should say, a narrative started building in my head of two brothers on opposite sides of a war. And the systems allowed for journaling of both brothers, in their respective situations during combat. I just really dug it. I thought it was a great opportunity to show two sides of the same coin, essentially by having twin identical brothers on opposite sides of a war. The system itself for Lost Among the Starlit Wreckage is a great opportunity to try and do something functional in which you are repairing your mech, trying to save yourself, and also reflecting upon the personal feelings of your protagonist, who is stuck in this machine that is on the verge of being destroyed or exploding. It's a desperate search for survival, but also a great chance for some introspection. Once again, I highly recommend it. Thank you again for listening to Your Story Will Be Different. If you're enjoying the podcast, I encourage you to leave a 5-star review on your platform of choice. Reach out via social media. I'm on Blue Sky, X, Instagram, and of course, check out some of these RPG systems for yourself. As always, I'm going to leave a link in the show notes to Lost Among the Starlit Wreckage by Seamus Keneally. And be sure to let me know on social media how your adventure trapped in a dying mech in outer space goes. But just remember, your story will be different.